to another episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Alethea Felton, and today's guest is someone spectacular, none other than Vanessa Judelman. She is a wife, a mother, an entrepreneur, and so much more. But in the world of entrepreneurship, she is not only a leadership coach and executive leadership advisor and author, but she leads consciously. She emphasizes and focuses on conscious leadership. She is the president of Mosaic People Development. And for well over 20 years, Vanessa has been helping clients to develop leaders who inspire great results. She is the person who provides leaders with the skills, tools, and confidence to lead with impact. But as I said earlier, she's a conscious leader, and conscious leadership is a whole other level of leading, which does guide people to great transformation. So I am so excited that Vanessa is going to share her own transformational journey of what even took her to this space she's in now. We're going to go ahead and start with our affirmation. And what I'll do is I'll say the affirmation once, you repeat it, and then we'll dive on in with Vanessa. And you know what else? Don't forget, share this episode with 5 people that you know. This podcast still ranks in the top 5% of podcasts globally, and it's because we're changing lives. And it takes guests like Vanessa, but it also takes listeners and followers like you. So before you do anything else, share this with 5 people you know. Let's go ahead and say the affirmation. I lead with integrity, transparency, and a deep commitment to the well-being of others. It is so exciting to have this guest today. And as you could hear from the introduction, she has such a wealth of knowledge, insight, expertise. Vanessa Judelman, I am so happy to have you on the Power Transformation Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you so much. And this is a conversation. This is just a time for us to not only know more about each other, although we have spoken offline prior to this podcast, but so that our listeners and our audience can learn even more about you. But what we're going to be talking about today is definitely transformative and so empowering. But before we get into that, I always like to start off with just a fun icebreaker question, random question, just so that we can get to know you more, okay? So this is your icebreaker question. Window seat or aisle seat when it comes to an airplane?
Has to be an aisle seat
Okay.
because I am 5'10". And many years ago, I had a skiing accident and I tore my ACL and my MCL in both knees at the same time, and I had double knee surgery. So I have long legs that need to stretch into that aisle. So 100% aisle seat only for me.
That makes total sense. And you're 5'10". I'm an inch shorter than you. I'm 5'9". So yes, the tall people's issues I do understand. So thank you for sharing that. Now, before we go more in depth with this, I'm doing something a little different with my guests. Instead of asking you to share all of your contact info at the end, I'm actually putting that more up front because with podcasts, sometimes people play them, walk off, come back. So off of the gate, Vanessa, how can people reach you if they want to connect with you more after this episode?
Okay, well, I have a website. My business is called Mosaic People Development. I'm a leadership consultant and coach. So you can go onto www.mosaicpd4peopledevelopment.com and find everything you need there.
Yes, indeed. And I will also have all of your information in the description and show notes. So this is the $1,000,000 question for you. Who is Vanessa Judelman?
Wow. It's funny when people ask that question because I think we all play so many different roles.
Hmm.
So I always wonder, do I go into role like I'm a mom, I have two teenage sons. It's actually my husband and my 19th wedding anniversary today. So
Oh, that's right. You told me happy anniversary.
thank you. So we're going out for a nice dinner tonight. So I have the role of wife, of mom, of entrepreneur. I love being an entrepreneur. When I as a leadership consultant and coach, I worked in corporate for 15 years
Mm,
before I ran my own business. And so I love being in the corporate world for so many reasons. I learned so much, but there was also a lot of darkness in the corporate world. There was a lot
mm.
leaders who weren't respectful. The reason I left the corporate world is because I had the worst leader of my life,
Oh.
who was actually a bit of a bully, if I really need to be honest with you. And she pushed me out. And it was good because I don't know if I would have left my cushy job in the corporate world to start my own business, even though it was always my vision and my dream. And I love being an entrepreneur, and I really consider myself an entrepreneur. I love wearing many hats. I love building things. So I consider myself a builder. I consider myself a reader. I'm a lifelong learner,
Mhm.
and I really love sushi.
Oh, I love sushi too, Vanessa. So look, one of these days when we meet in person, we'll have to go and eat sushi. I'm great. I love sushi.
We're gonna
Oh
do
my
it.
gosh, I really do enjoy sushi. And sometimes people don't understand it, but don't knock it till you try it. It is delicious. It really is. And you said you're a reader. Now, although you are an entrepreneur, you have corporate background. When you say you are a reader, are you more of a nonfiction reader, a fiction reader, or a combo of both?
100% a combo of both. I
Okay.
actually alternate. So right now I can show you I'm reading this great book called CEO Excellence.
Mm.
And it's the six mindsets that distinguish the best leaders from the rest. So it's interesting because I remember a couple of years ago, I was on the subway in Toronto. I live in Toronto, and I bumped into a friend of mine and I was reading a leadership book. And she said, "Why are you reading a leadership book? Like, you're a leadership consultant and coach, you're an expert, you've written your own book about leadership." But to me, I'm so passionate about the industry I'm in. I always want to learn more. So
Hmm.
in the area of nonfiction, it's typically about business or leadership because I'm so interested about best practices and mindset and what makes a good leader and how to develop organizational
Hmm.
culture and change. And I just love it. I find it so interesting.
And I think a key point that you said earlier was about being a lifelong learner, and that what some people may not realize is that those of us in certain roles or positions, specifically in leadership, regardless of the field, leaders emphasize the importance of lifelong learning. It is so vital to stay on top of our own knowledge and skills so that we're sharp, but also so that we can share that info with others. And so I do appreciate the fact that you are such a reader and that you're doing your best to stay on top of what you already know and to add to your skill set. So thank you. Thank you for that. Now, when we talk about you as a leader, how in the world did you decide years ago that you even wanted to enter the corporate realm? Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you down that road.
Sure. So I went to university, college in Montreal at a
Mhm,
university called McGill, and I was an English major there because I love to read. And so I
mhm,
was like, wow, I can actually get a degree for reading books. Why doesn't everybody do this? This is the absolute best. And you learn so much about history and culture through reading, right? It's always every book you read is a lens into someone else's life, which I love. And so at the end of my degree, my mom, who is a teacher, said, "Well, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do with an English degree?" Right.
mm,
So she was a teacher. So she said, "You best go to teacher's college." So I went to teacher's college. I got my diploma. So that was my second degree in education. And at the time that I graduated, there weren't a lot of jobs for teachers.
mm,
So I did get a job working in a program for at-risk youth, and I really enjoyed that. But I started getting like a lot of binders thrown at my head and things like that. I thought,
mm.
Oh, well, okay, this is a little intense for me.
You
Uh,
think?
so if I'm built for this. And then I met somebody, I was volunteering in an organization, and I met
Hmm.
somebody at a training and consulting firm. So she worked in adult education. And she happened to mention that she just got promoted. And I said, tell me more. Who's replacing you? She said, they're hiring right now. Would you like me to put you forward for an interview? I said, absolutely. So I got a job, started at the bottom. I was in my 20s. I was the assistant to the vice president of consulting, and I worked there for 10 years and I worked my way up. I moved from the assistant to someone in sales to a junior consultant to a senior consultant position. So I just found my niche. I was so lucky.
Yeah, and that's quite remarkable that you still found something that you enjoyed. And although you weren't able to work necessarily in a traditional school, what I'm glad about is that you at least had the experience to work with youth to know whether or not this is what you really wanted to do for the rest of your life. And so, although you had the experience, it had its moments when you enjoyed it. Of course, you don't want to do anything that's going to put your bodily and physical self at risk. So I do applaud you though for the work that you did do. So in that being with that rather being said, what was a pivotal moment in your career that significantly shaped your approach to leadership development?
Well, I would say a couple. I mean,
Mhm.
one is really that pivot from staying in education, staying with my passion, and moving from working with youth to working with adults. I feel like
Mhm.
that was my destiny to work with adults, to bring more light to the corporate world.
Mhm.
As leaders set the tone, leaders make or break people's experience at work. So I feel like that was my destiny to be working with adults. So it
Mhm.
was that switch. And then the second one is when I worked at this training and consulting firm, I'd had a lot of great leaders there. But over the years, I have had in corporate two really, really bad leaders. And
Mhm.
those people, while it was really challenging to work for them at the time, were pivotal because I learned how not to lead. I learned what it feels like to work for a leader who doesn't value you, who doesn't build you up, who doesn't care about you, who cares more about the bottom line than people. So having those two leaders over the 15 years of working in corporate, before that, I always thought, oh, anyone can get along with anyone. You just have crucial conversations and build high trust and come from a place of integrity. And then I learned, oh, no, that's not true. You can come from that place, but the other person is not.
Mhm.
There's a misalignment there in terms of your intentions. And so that's what really made me say, okay, I don't want anyone else to have the experience that I had working for these two leaders who really were very soul sucking. And so I tell that
Mhm.
story to leaders all the time. I say, do you want to be that person? And so that's a little bit when you mentioned earlier about how we're going to talk about what it means to be a conscious leader.
Yes.
That's a lot of my journey now is to really help leaders understand, your actions and behavior actually make or break people's experience at work. That's the truth.
Mhm. So that's a very good segue because this is what I was going to ask next is that you do a lot of work centered around conscious
Yeah.
leadership. For a person who has never heard of the term or heard of conscious leadership but aren't quite sure what it is, tell
Mm.
us in layman's terms what exactly is conscious leadership?
Right. So, my definition of conscious leadership is being conscious of how your thoughts, actions, and behavior impact yourself and the people around you.
Mm, mm.
So, that's it.
Very simple. It's not as difficult or challenging as it may sound.
No,
Interesting.
that's
Interesting.
a good point. It's actually a simple definition, but I
Mhm.
think it's harder to implement. It takes years to be that conscious leader because I feel like in the corporate world, there's a lot of pressure. People have objectives and they're working with, have to do more with less. And so
Mhm.
on the treadmill all the time. And
Yeah.
so have to be able to pause and say, okay, I'm on the treadmill, I'm feeling stressed out. Where do I go under stress? So, for example, that's one component of under being a conscious leader is understanding where do
Mhm.
I go under stress? Do I introvert under stress? Do I extrovert under stress? So
Yeah.
if I go into my cave under stress, what are
Hmm.
the implications of that to my team? Or
Hmm.
sometimes it's really good because you give people space.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not good. So every work style has strengths and weaknesses. And when you overuse your strengths, they become weaknesses, right? So if you go into your cave, how does that sometimes, if you overuse it, become a weakness? You're not having crucial conversations with people. You're not being vulnerable with people. You're not giving constructive feedback when necessary. Okay, so the flip side, let's take someone who extroverts like myself, right? I
Hmm.
under stress. You know what I'm thinking and feeling all the time. So, how is that good? Well, it's good because people know what I'm thinking and feeling. I can say, I'm feeling stressed right now. Can we talk about that? Or I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. Or I'm feeling a little anxious right now. Can we talk about that? But the
Hmm.
downside, if I overuse that strength of being a very good, authentic, vulnerable communicator, is sometimes I just get mad.
Hmm.
And sometimes I just, might say something that's inappropriate. And so I need to slow down or walk around the block or take those deep breaths. So that's what being a conscious leader is all about.
And was it through the experience of that boss who was more of a bully boss that led you down that path? What sparked your actual journey for this discovery and then implementation of conscious leadership, even in your own workplaces?
Yeah, I would definitely say it was having those negative experiences that made me
Mhm.
say, honestly, I don't want anyone to have that experience. And
Mm.
where do we spend most of our time? We spend most of our
Work.
time at work.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so what I've learned and realized over the years is if I can impact one leader, it has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Just like I know you've worked, with youth over your career and
Mhm.
with teachers over your career. You know
Mhm.
that if you impact that one youth or that one teacher, it has a
Mhm.
ripple effect, right? So
It
that's
does.
yeah, so that's my journey as a leader. And a lot of the leaders I work with, and I teach them to be conscious of their actions, thoughts, and behaviors and how they impact themselves and the people around them, it ripples into their home lives too.
Mhm.
People say, oh, I had this conversation with my wife about what we taught, what we learned in our leadership class. Amazing, right? Or I had this conversation with my kids. Amazing. So I always say to people, everything I share with you in this leadership program, please share it with your team. Share it with
Mhm.
your husband, share it with your
Yeah.
wife, with your cousins, right? Because it does, it's really, I mean, the tools that you learn as a leader are actually life skills.
They are. Yes. And you can apply them in multiple arenas as well. Hmm. Now, what do you say to the not skeptic, but say to the leader who has more of a traditional style of leading,
Hmm.
who may hear you and say, "Well, I'm a conscious leader, but I respect what you do as a leader, but it's not the same thing." So, in that case, what distinguishes a conscious leader from a traditional leader? What are some of those characteristics and traits?
Well, it's really knowledge. It's really
Mm.
is knowledge and understanding. So when I work with those leaders, it's funny. I actually sometimes as an executive coach, people choose to have an executive coach. Sometimes they're told they have to have an executive coach. So
Hmm.
I had somebody recently who was told he needed to work with an executive coach, a very unconscious leader. So the first time I met with him, we met over Zoom. His arms were crossed, his eyes were rolled. He was very close. So I used humor. I said to him, okay, so I know we're forced to work together. Let's just have a laugh about that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to have this hour together today? He's like, a 2. I go,
Oh,
great. So, like, just be honest, have a good sense of humor. And
yeah.
then what I do is I ask these individuals to bring in their own experiences. And I always, interestingly enough, start with research and data. So I'll use books like, um, I don't know if you've heard of The Speed of Trust by Stephen M. R. Covey. It's a
I've
one
I've read some of his books, not that one though. Mm-hmm.
So Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly
Highly
Effective People,
effective people. Mm-hmm.
this is his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, who wrote The 3.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. I did not realize that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a book that's steeped in research, right? So I'll start with the research. Let's say, okay, I've heard, for example, that you don't have a high trust team right now. Would you agree with that? Yes or no? That's what I've been told. That's why we're here, to
Mm-hmm.
build a high trust team. So let's define it. What does the research say about high trust teams?
Mm-hmm.
How? So I'll use some data, for example. Like, did you know that the research indicates that organizations that are high trust outperform their competition from a bottom line perspective by almost 300%?
Mm. I can see that.
Right? Building the business case for why trust is not fluffy, it's good for business. So that's how I start with leaders like that. I actually find they'll buy in very often through data and research. That's why I read books like this, right? CEO Excellence, which is based on research.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of that specific client that you worked with, what was the outcome of that? Was he more open to you near the end of the coaching?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
That's my job as an executive coach is I have to build trust.
Yeah.
Know me. They've been forced to work with me, so I have to build trust. So how do I do that? I do that by being really respectful, by listening a lot, by being vulnerable myself. I'll share stories. I
Mm-hmm.
had, for example, I had a client yesterday, one of my coaching clients who said to me, Vanessa, I'm feeling really frazzled today. I would really love for you to help me to figure out how to focus. I have a lot going on in my personal life right now and I'm really struggling to focus at work. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I know how you feel. I lost both of my parents last year. I know what it's like to work when your personal life is up in arms, is over the things are over the top out of control. So I shared that with him. He didn't share anything with me about what was happening in his personal life.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I just feel like if I can be a real person and say, I understand life can be hard sometimes. He opened up so much just by me mentioning that. And I did it really authentically. Like I wasn't doing it, to force him to open up. I was just saying, I get it. I'm a person, you're a person. I feel you. And here's what
Mm-hmm.
my experience was. And I really understand and empathize. I think it's that empathy and compassion that I can show as a coach. And I think empathy and compassion, actually, you asked me a question about leadership traits.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy and compassion are underrated, and empathy and compassion are different.
They are.
They're different. And I think you need both as a leader.
What is how do you explain the difference
Hmm.
between empathy and compassion?
To me, empathy is about being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, I empathize, I understand how you feel. Compassion is taking action.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that action component of it. So let's say someone is struggling. Empathy is, I'm really sorry. I lost my parents last year and I know how you feel. I really empathize with that. Compassion is taking a next step. Let's say this was my direct report. I might say, do you need some time off? You know what? Take off the rest of the week. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Take off the rest of the week.
Yeah.
So what about you? I'm curious. Do you have definitions of?
Yeah. So I think empathy is definitely when you feel and somewhat understand what another person is experiencing. And when I say understand, I use that lightly because although I have both of my parents, say, for example, hypothetically, if I didn't, I still think people have to be careful, especially in grief, to say, I understand what you're going through because we all still have that own experience for ourselves. But I think empathy shows that I've been in a similar situation. I'm a human being and I genuinely care and I feel for what you are going through. That's what I think empathy is. Compassion, I do think compassion is you feel for that person and you want to help change something in that situation to make it for the better. So I think both of us have the same understanding of it. And the reason I asked you for those definitions is when we think about the concept of conscious leadership, is can empathy and compassion be taught, or are those inherent traits in your perspective when it comes to this concept of being a conscious leader? Because while I think that the conscious leadership concept works, I know it does, and I understand it. What about if a person has a leader or a boss or a supervisor, or they themselves might not be the most empathetic or compassionate person? Are those skills that can be taught to them over time, or is it just a fixed outcome where either you have it or you don't?
No, they can definitely be taught over time. I
Hmm.
think the key is over time. This is
That's
not,
right.
that's like you hit the nail on the head when you said over time.
Hmm.
I had a client years ago who he was the head of an IT team, and he was like a star performer. I mean, he's really good on the technical side, but not good on the relationship side. So that's what we were
Oh.
coaching. And I said to him, tell me about a time where you demonstrated empathy. He couldn't think of one.
Mhm.
So I made him read, you know what a good book is for that? Is Daniel Goldman's book, Emotional Intelligence.
Yes, I've read that. Hmm.
Yeah, because that's a whole concept of emotional intelligence. It's understanding my emotions, how they impact me and the people around me.
Hmm.
And so you can assess your emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman's company has put together an emotional intelligence assessment. You can
Hmm.
assess it, and you can definitely, like, they break it down into different components, like empathy, like optimism.
That's right.
There's different parts of emotional intelligence, and you can definitely learn. And what I would say is you have to want to learn it.
Yeah.
It's always like growth mindset is choice plus hard work, because you have to choose
Hmm.
to learn it. And then you have to work hard at it. You have to work hard to
Hmm.
create habits and overcome mindsets and beliefs that have been rattling around in your brain for in some cases decades.
Hmm. And when we talk about different organizations, because you have worked with so many different ones, when you're working with an organization and they come to you with wanting trainings for conscious leadership, how would you advise organizations to identify potential leaders who possess the innate qualities needed to be conscious leaders? And what strategies then can they employ to help to nurture those individuals effectively?
I think the best way is to use self-assessments. And
Hmm.
there's so many different assessment tools. I like to start with the data,
Yeah,
right? So even using a tool like the DISC profile, which is work style assessment, which you
that's
know,
right. Yes.
right? What I love about DISC, and it's so interesting actually. Let me finish my sentence. I'll tell you what's interesting. What I love about DISC is it measures your work style. So it's how you show up at work. And there's four different work styles. DISC stands for dominant, influencer, steady, and conscientious. Guess what? No work style is good or bad, right or wrong. It's just different. So
Hmm.
immediately by people learning that, they learn that the way you are is great. And the way your colleague is, who's completely opposite of you, is also great. No good or bad, no right or wrong, just different. And so what that does is it opens people up to work in a judgment-free zone. So
Hmm.
now, so I say to them, when we learn about DISC and work styles, I'll say to them, the next time you're in the meeting with that person who really annoys you, instead of judging them, what you're going to say is, not good or bad, right or wrong, just different. We're
Yeah.
wired differently. And so it breeds, those self-assessment tools are so wonderful to breed understanding. And then the story I was going to tell you is yesterday I started with a new client and I did his DISC profile with him. And he just understand. We spent an hour just understanding his wiring. He said to me, honestly, Vanessa, that 1 hour understanding the data around my work style was better than 1 year of therapy.
Wow. That really says a lot. That says a lot. And I'm curious, was it that client's first time ever taking a DISC assessment?
It was, yes.
Interesting. And that is a common test. That is a common assessment. I don't want to say test because it's not graded. It's not right or wrong, as you said. But if somebody out there, if any of you haven't heard about that or know what it is, definitely take one or ask your job about it, because that is very beneficial to find out what your work style is. And in thinking about this leadership development concept, um, and the effect overall that they have on an organization before it begins to work effortlessly, excuse me. Um, Vanessa, what have you seen are some common challenges? We're hearing about how wonderful this can be, and it is overall. But what have you seen in your work are the common challenges that leaders face when they are transitioning to a more conscious leadership style, either for themselves or for their organizations? And how do you come in and coach them to be more accepting of it and to be more appreciative in seeing its value?
Yeah. Well, the common issue is that people go to extremes to fix stuff, right? So this is
Hmm.
what I often see. I'll give you an example. I have a client who is a CEO of a company who is very dominant. And so because he's so dominant, people on his team are a little bit nervous because they never know which version of him they're going to get.
Oh.
And so he's dominant and I would say quite moody, like sometimes really high, sometimes really low, depending on how things are going in the business. So what he's done now is he's pulled back. So it's like, I'm not going to talk anymore in meetings at all. So now he goes to meetings and doesn't talk. And everyone's like, what's going on with you?
Hmm.
Right? And it's extreme. So we had to, I said to him, okay, you were here on this, like this side of the continuum of like extremely dominant. Now you're not talking at all. That's extreme. So what does it look like what's that middle ground?
Hmm.
What is that middle ground? So learning new behavior is hard, right? If you play tennis with your left hand and I say switch and play it with your right hand, that's hard.
Hmm.
Change is hard. It takes time. It takes a lot of work. And
Hmm.
so he's learning over time what that middle ground looks like. And he's very brave because he's
Yeah.
putting in a good effort and it's not working.
Hmm.
Like now everybody's telling me I'm not doing it right. First, I wasn't doing it right on this end of the scale because I was too intense. And now I'm not saying anything and I'm still not doing it right. That's hard. That's hard feedback when you're trying and people say you're still not doing it right. So that's what we talked about is what does that middle ground look like?
Hmm. And I like that example because it also shows when dealing with adults. Sometimes people think when you work with youth, it's one way, but adult learning theory is not that far off from even how kids learn, because we are pretty much, yes, we can be moldable and shapeable, but moldable isn't the word. I think I just created that. Can't think of the word that I'm trying to say, but oh well. But my whole point is that oftentimes certain strategies that are found to work more for youth also work for adults, because we're almost in a way fixed in our learning style and our technique, and there has to be buy-in on both ends. So with adult learning theory, since just as you, I worked, and of course, as a coach, I still work with adults, is that in order to find that middle ground, because it has to be that in order to have anything happen successfully. What about even for yourself, as you were researching this over the years and starting to implement it? In what ways did you have to overcome even maybe some self-imposed challenges in becoming a true conscious leader, and what guides you to even teaching about it now?
Oh yeah, I had to overcome a lot of issues as a leader. I mean, I
Mhm.
was here in the trenches for many years and I had people who loved my leadership style and I had people who didn't like my leadership style and they were very frank about it.
Mm.
Right. And so I always use, like, I think the journey as a leader is to find your authentic self. as your journey as a human being is too, right? Find your authentic self and bring the best version of yourself to work. But that's different for everybody. So for
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm a very task-oriented person. I am also a very relationship-oriented person. At work, it sort of brought out my task orientation because I'm goal oriented. I was like, let's get the goal and let's move fast and no time to discuss, move, move, move. I was like, and then I got feedback. You're moving too quickly.
Oh.
I did too quickly. Your expectations are too high. I have very high expectations of myself. So I would put my expectations of myself on everybody else. Some of my team members could roll with that. And some people said, stop. You're stressing me out. You're moving too quickly. You're
Mm.
not giving me enough information. I'm like, figure it out. Because I like to figure things out for myself. Not everybody likes to do that. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to figure it out. I need you to tell me. I need you to give me more data. I need you to give me more focus, clarify your expectations more for me. I was like, wow, some people need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. So it's from those people that I learned the most who didn't like my leadership style because they push back. And so that's what I've learned is like, I do need to slow down and I do need to
Mm-hmm.
be mindful of pace and I do need to balance task and relationship.
And how did you not take that personally? And I ask that because even the best of the best leaders can become very defensive if a person says that, or they'll think something's wrong with you if you don't understand. Like, how did you reconcile that? How did you not take it personally and truly receive it as constructive feedback? Because I think that's key for transformation as a leader.
I did take it personally, to be honest.
Mm,
I did take it personally. I don't anymore.
yeah.
In my 30s, when I was a leader, I did take it. I hated that person.
Hmm.
I did. I was like, oh, she's so difficult. And, and then that was honestly, that was my immediate reaction. I was like, she's
Hmm.
so difficult. Oh, I wish she wasn't on my team. But then I had to reflect, right? I had to slow down and reflect and say, okay, I heard the expression once that like in every piece of feedback, there's an element of truth. Is there a
Hmm.
truth in this? Like, do I need to grow up? How do I need to grow up? So I I reflected over time, but it really I did take it personally. And you know what? It did hurt my feelings. And I think we've all had feedback that hurt our feelings. And then
Hmm.
you have to be a responsible adult and say, okay, although it hurt my feelings, and I did take it personally, what's the grain of truth in that? And that's the growth mindset. Nothing's set in stone. When I
Hmm.
read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, The
Yes.
New Psychology of Success, that changed my life because I realized where I was in a fixed mindset, which means my belief was something was set in, something is set in stone. Carol Dweck says nothing's set in stone. That's the growth mindset. So I was like, okay, nothing about my leadership style is set in stone. So I can change what I want. I can actually give people more data. I can be clearer and clarify my expectations more. I can slow down. I can work with my team to manage change instead of imposing change on them.
Hmm.
It takes time. It takes reflection, courage, vulnerability.
And I think too, I really thank you for being that transparent and open, saying that you did take it personally, because sometimes those of us in these leadership roles seem like we have everything all together, that it just bounces off of us, but that doesn't happen overnight. And I won't put this on you, but I know for me, when it comes to, or came to, especially in the past, getting tough feedback, I too would take it personally. But what would happen was, yes, I would do introspection, but I would end up talking to someone I trust about it. And sometimes that trusted person would say, well, sometimes you do X, Y, and Z. And when you hear it from someone who genuinely loves you, that stings also. But I had to learn how to really take it in and say, okay, maybe we have this term in the States. I'm not certain how popular it is in Canada, but people say everybody has a hater. There's always somebody hating on you, meaning someone
Of
who's
course.
jealous about you, things like that. But sometimes that's not always the case. It may not be a hater. It may genuinely be someone who's giving feedback that we don't want to hear. So, in that aspect, even in conscious leadership, I think it's important to be receptive of any feedback that we get because that's still going to happen. And so, what what practical tools or even strategies or techniques, Vanessa, do you recommend for leaders to maintain as they continue developing as conscious leaders?
Patience with
Mm,
yourself is number one. Think of that leader who is talked too much in meetings and is too dominant and now is not talking at all and is extreme. Set to
mhm,
be patient with yourself. Be kind with yourself, right? You're on a journey. No journey takes a day. It can take years, right? If I think about skills that I've developed, you have to persevere. I think perseverance too
mm,
is such an incredible quality to have in any, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work in a job, you're a teacher, you work in corporate, it doesn't matter. You have to persevere, right?
mhm.
You're going to have ups and downs in life. You're going to have ups and downs in your career, right? Perseverance and grit. I know there's a wonderful book called Grit too. I love
Yes,
that.
I have read that one. Mhm,
Right? You need
mhm,
perseverance in life. I had a client say to me, she's looking for a new job, and she said, "Oh, the interview was amazing. I had my first interview, but I didn't get the job, so I'm going to give up." I was like, "What?
mm-mm,
What? One job interview and no, 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 no. You're not giving up after one." I go, "That's pretty impressive, actually, that you got one interview so quickly."
mhm.
Right. So that concept of perseverance in personal growth in life is so important. Keep at it. It's okay. And I think Carol Dweck in her book Mindset uses the term not yet. And I
Mhm.
teach all my leaders not yet.
That's right.
Don't you
Yes.
love that? Like, I'm not yet there. So remember, you're not yet there. So when I make a mistake and when I'm working on something like my patience, for example, and I do something impatient, I'm like, not yet there. Working
Mhm.
You don't beat yourself up when you make a mistake. You just not yet there.
That's right. And that not yet gives you grace. It gives you the grace to say, I'm still trying, I'm still ever yet learning, and I'm going to eventually get there. Now, this conversation to me has been very intriguing and inspiring, but just to kind of add to just a bit more excitement to it, and it's been exciting, but I use the word excitement because tell us about a time, Vanessa, where you actually have seen an entire organization have measurable improvements in business outcomes due to conscious leadership. Is there someone or a particular entity that comes to mind? You don't have to share the actual company's name, but is there something where you saw this concept of conscious leadership really taking this business to the next level?
All the time. I see it
Ah,
all the time. So one example I can give you was, oh yeah, all the time. And the companies, it starts at the top, right? So when
uh-huh.
CEO says, "I'm going to take the leadership training too," I know that it's going to work because
Yeah.
often what happens in organizations, they we'll just do it for the middle managers, but the executive team, they're okay. I'm like, no. Have they ever had leadership training? Because what happens is people get promoted and promoted and promoted. One of the biggest issues in corporate is the lack of training and education. People get promoted because they're good at their job, right? You're
Mm,
in marketing, you're good at marketing, that's what you learned in college, and now you promoted because you're good at marketing to be a marketing manager. It's a different job. Managing people is a different job. It's the same with executives, the C-suite. Some people have never had any leadership skills. Leadership's a different job than whatever you're trained to do in college, right? So one example was a CEO had called me. He was in an airport in Miami. He was there with a colleague, and the colleague screamed at him in public in the airport.
mm,
And he said, "This person is out of control. And he has no emotional intelligence. You gotta help, right?" I worked with this person for about 4 years. I'm not kidding you. On and off. We had like a 12-month intensive, and then on and off. He would call me, be on the highway, be like, "Hey, Vanessa." We go through everything. We debrief it. He was so committed. To your point, he wanted to change his behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's now the CEO of the firm. The CEO retired. This person is now running the business.
Wow.
He's invested in his people. He trains them. They do leadership offsite. The whole culture has changed.
Wow, that is quite astonishing. And it is no mistake at all in the fact that his desire for wanting to change has definitely paid off for him. It has those outfits and eh, has those outcomes, excuse me. And it begs the question to me, when you think about the whole concept of conscious leadership, what do you see it as, say, in terms of evolving within the next decade? How will this concept evolve over the next decade, specifically when it comes to businesses and leaders in those businesses?
I hope that more leaders will become conscious.
Hmm.
So when you have more conscious people on the planet, then the planet evolves.
Yeah.
It's that ripple effect.
Hmm.
So, you know, I touch the people that I touch, you touch the people you touch. If people are listening and do, whatever your work is, whatever your journey is, it's that ripple effect. So the more we can teach people what it means to be conscious as a leader and in your everyday life,
Hmm.
the more the world's going to change. It's people who go through the world with blinders on, right? And never think about their behavior, never think about their work and how they impact other people. You know,
Mhm.
those are the people that concern me. That anyone
Mhm.
who's open to growth and development and being a better version of themselves, we need more of those people in the world. And
Yeah.
to get more of those, that's going to have an impact over the next 10 years.
And should a person or a leader, say if a CEO of an organization is listening to this and they don't yet have this whole implementation of conscious leadership in their organization, is it something to be viewed as a one size fits all approach? Or, Vanessa, when you work with these companies, how do you tailor programs to meet the specific needs of different organizations and industries?
So when I started my business in 2011, one of
Hmm.
the things that I did is I went through all of my coaching notes as an executive coach. I worked in a consulting company for 10 years. I went through all of the needs analysis that I done, and I looked for themes. I literally wrote themes, needs analysis. What are all the themes? Coaching clients. What are all the goals that we set in coaching? Put them on sticky
Hmm.
papers, put them on all over the wall. And I came up with 3 buckets for leadership success.
Oh.
As a leader, you need to know yourself, manage your team, and lead your business. And leadership's complex. There's multifaceted. So what I've done with this model is take the complexity of leadership and put it into these buckets. And then I run an 8-module leadership program aligned with these buckets. So know yourself is the DISC profile, is trust, is mindset, manage your team, it's coaching, it's giving feedback, receiving feedback, both positive and constructive. It's how to build a high performing team. Lead your business. That's about leading, managing, communicating change, prioritization, delegation, executing strategically, right? Most leaders know or have been told, hey, you need to be more strategic. They have no idea what it means. What does that mean?
Mm.
Break down strategy for them into the 3 components. So that's my core program that I roll out to organizations. The reason it's 8 months, again, is I say to people, they're like, can you do an offsite, a boot camp for 2 days? I'm like, I cannot. I will not. I want transformation, right? Your podcast is about transformation. I want
That's
transformation.
right.
I don't believe you can get transformation as a leader in a boot camp for 2 days. It's 8 months.
Hmm.
Learn
Yeah.
it, they practice it, they come back, we debrief, they learn a little more, they practice it, I review. You're an educator. Learning, it takes time.
Hmm. It does. It takes time, it takes practice, receptiveness, and it's ever evolving and ever changing. And I could talk to you about this all day. I think it is a very effective, transformative way of learning, a way of leading, and to use the word conscious. We hear about conscious relationships, conscious leadership. There are so many terms out there that use the word conscious. And I think that is because we are in this complex society, and especially the landscape of business itself, in
Yeah.
terms of how we navigate it. What role do you envision conscious leadership playing in shaping the future of work? And also, Vanessa, what would you say to aspiring leaders that aim to embrace this concept of conscious leadership?
Well, conscious leaders are the future of work.
Hmm.
The more conscious leaders I see out there, the more I see their businesses are incredibly successful. Like I do see a correlation between, for example, retention, right? If you have a conscious leader at the helm who's treating people with passion, with compassion, with empathy, who's
Hmm.
smart, sets objectives and goals too, manages that task and relationship, has that balance, it impacts their bottom line. Building high trust, it impacts the bottom line. It impacts retention. You're able to retain customers and people.
Yeah.
So conscious leaders are the future. And I think if you are someone who's saying, you know what, I want to be a conscious leader, then start with that first pillar of know yourself. I would say that's the first place to start. Learn about your work style. Read Carol Book's mindset. Start learning about what it means to have a growth mindset. Get feedback from people. Wouldn't it be wonderful to send out an email today to 3 trusted colleagues? And I love your advice of getting, when you get feedback, going to a trusted person and saying, what do you think? I love that, by the way. And I would say maybe extend that concept and say, email a trusted colleagues and say, what are my 3 strengths and what are my 3 weaknesses? Like start with that place of knowing yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. And in what ways has doing this work transformed your life?
It's transformed my mindset. It's made me a better version of myself. It's
Mm.
made me very conscious of, I use the terms, what I always say to leaders, I want you to be the best version of yourself. How do you do that? You need to learn to dial stuff up and dial stuff down. So I've learned through my leadership practice, I need to, for example, dial up my patience, or maybe dial down my impatience and
Mhm.
dial up my listening, for example. So when I do that in my leadership practice, it transfers into my home life too.
That's right.
So, oh yeah, it is that ripple effect for sure.
I love every bit of this. And for anybody listening, watching, although she is based in Toronto, I have global listenership. Please, if your organization wants her, book her, fly her in so that she can come, pay for her hotel, everything. Whatever you have to do, get her into your organization or contact her for coaching. Vanessa, it was such an honor having you today. Thank you for being that conscious leader that the world needs. And it has been such an honor and a joy having you on the Power Transformation Podcast.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful, delightful conversation.
If you enjoyed today's show, then you don't want to miss an episode. So follow the Power Transformation Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you usually listen, and remember to rate and review. I also invite you to connect with me on social media at Alethea Felton. That's at ALETHEAFELTON. Until next time, remember to be good to yourself and to others.